What's up, everybody? Welcome to another summer edition of Morning Cuppa Hockey. We hope you enjoyed last week's interview with Mario Ferraro, and hopefully he's off Colby's shit list. But this is Morning Cuppa Hockey presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. I'm Jonny Lazarus. That's Colby Cohen. We got Dylan Strome from the Washington Capitals joining the show this week. Should be a really fun interview with him. We're going to get to that shortly. But before we do that, Colby, what's going on? I know you had a pretty busy week last week doing the USA Hockey stuff. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I think we should just pull Stromer in. Let's get him into the show. Let's chat with him, and then on the backside we can talk a little bit about what's going on. So hey, man, look, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you since we parted ways in Chicago, but obviously we keep in touch on social media and whatnot. And I'll be honest, I much more enjoy the wife's social media because she always posts the dog and the dogs and the girls, and any of our devoted Morning Cuppa Hockey listeners, they know the golden retriever thing is the world to me. And so, even before I got to know Stromer, he was like one of my favorite guys in the league. He's a big golden retriever guy. So, the hockey stuff people can look up. I go right to the good stuff, Stromer. So what's going on with you, man? How's your summer?
Not much, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's good. Yeah, it's busy. 2 kids now, 2 dogs.
Wow.
Yeah, so 3-year-old.
4 under 2, right?
Yeah, pretty much 4 under 2. 4 under 3, I guess. My daughter's 3 and a bit, and my second daughter, Emerson, is 10 months, and then I got a 1-year-old golden retriever and a 2-year-old golden retriever. So I got a pretty busy household over here, but we make the most
Holy
of it.
shit.
It's good to be busy. There's always stuff to do. So, like I said, it is busy at times, but we find, we make the most of it and we enjoy it. So, life's crazy at this moment, but I know it's all going to be worth it in the long run, and it's still fun.
Where do you spend your off season?
Just outside Toronto, Oakville, Ontario.
What were you doing yesterday? Was it a team golf outing? I saw the TSN interview you did. Yesterday.
It was a golf tournament for the Smile Zone Foundation. It's like a charity foundation that my agent, Pat Morris, is a big part of. And I've gone to it, I think, for 6 or 7 years in a row. I know it's a great cause, and there's, tons of hockey players, tons of media personalities, and lots of people in and around the game that are there. So I think just, to get a few more eyeballs, they asked TSN and Sportsnet to come out, and it's great. They do the first up morning show from the course, and so did that first, and then Mark Masters asked me a couple questions, and away we went.
Yeah, I saw you had a fun answer about turning the goal differential around this season, which was pretty funny. And, I got to put my hand up. I doubted you guys all year last year. I was like, there's no fucking way the Capitals making the playoffs. I said it on this show every week, and you guys continue to prove me wrong every week. So I got to ask you, I asked the hard-hitting journalism questions on this show. I'm putting you on the hot seat. Can you just make it make sense? Like, what was going on with the team last year? Because it felt like the deadline, it wasn't going to trend toward the playoffs. And all of a sudden, Carbs and you guys figured it out, and you made a really good push in the second half.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing, like when people just look at stats and they see kind of, obviously the goal differential wasn't good, but I think probably I want to say 6 or 7 games this year, last year, we were down 3-0 in the third, and it just turned into 7-0 or 7-1, and it was it just happened kind of quickly like that. So, when that happens, your goal differential goes down, obviously. But I think a huge reason why we made the playoffs is yes, we lost Kuznetsov and Mantha at the deadline, but really Kuznetsov hadn't been playing for I think around a month at that time, and so we pretty much lost one roster player on our team. We didn't pick anyone up, so I think we didn't really have any turnover at the deadline. Whereas teams some teams that are selling have a lot of turnover, bring new guys in, and it takes a little while to adjust. So we had the same team. We didn't really change much from before the deadline till after the deadline. Obviously, it sucked losing Mantha, but we kind of just had guys step up and find ways to make great plays, and we ended up doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I think a lot of people share this sentiment. It's good for the National Hockey League to have Alexander Ovechkin in the playoffs. I mean, the guy is still, he's on the Mount Rushmore, and it seems like you and him have found some really good chemistry in the way that you guys play together. And when I think about your history, Stromer, overall, you played junior hockey with McDavid. You had more points than him his last year, right? I think I looked that up, and you actually had more points than him. It was probably you, DeBrincat and McDavid on a line, which is not really all that fair to the rest of the league. Then you get to Chicago, and you develop better, you, Cat, and Kane develop great chemistry, and people were always clamoring to have you with those guys more, especially when I was there, because you were one of the only guys that I think could really think the game to play with Kaner and DeBrincat. And then you go to Washington and you gel with Ovi. So, what is it about the way that you play, or what is it about these guys? Because these are Mount Rushmore players. I mean, we're talking about 3 of the greats all time, and you slide in so nicely with these guys.
Yeah, I think, I think it's obviously you don't get to choose where you play. I think that's the first and foremost. So you kind of you got to adapt to whatever gets thrown at you. I think with McDavid, when I first got to junior, I was 16, and he had already played the year in the league. We were the same age, but we really became close friends. And I found that a lot over my career. I find the closer you are with some guys, and the the friendships that you develop off the ice, I think really translates to on the ice. DeBrincat and I were best friends, and we had been since the beginning, since junior. And I think that and obviously I got traded from Arizona to Chicago. He was the first person I called, and he had read a Bob McKenzie tweet saying there's a trade from Arizona to Chicago, and then he got a call from me, and we were just there's just no way, and then it ended up happening. So I think, I think to kind of answer your question, I'm very fortunate to play with very, very good players. I've been that way my whole career. I think, hockey IQ and hockey sense has a big part of it. Like you said, I think, those guys know how to score. They want to score. They want to be, they want to have the most points in the league. They want to have the most points, at that night in the game. And, I've tried to be a guy that produces at every level I've been at. And when you get the opportunity to play with those guys, you kind of got to just take it and run with it, because if you don't, someone else is going to. So I found that out the hard way in Chicago, first, parts of my time there. When you're not playing well, other guys are going to jump ahead of you and find a way to produce with those guys. And then the coach is going to go with what's hot. So, that's kind of the way it goes. And I've been very fortunate to play with unbelievable players like Kane and DeBrincat. Obviously were, 2 of my favorite line mates I've ever had. Of course we had some good chemistry, some good success. And then when you get to play with a guy like Ovi, it's just, you got to find a way to get him the puck. It's a lot different than Kaner, where Kaner wants the puck, and Ovi, he wants the puck when he can shoot it, and you got to find a way to get it to him. And there's a reason why they're, like you said, on the Mount Rushmore of hockey greats. Yeah. So it's fun to be a part of.
Is there a common denominator between those 3 guys that you've noticed maybe that sets them apart? Because again, you're in the 1%, right? When you're in the NHL, you're a 1%er. But then there's the 1% of the 1%, right? There's those guys that are the freaks, that are the, we got Ovi, who's going to break a record probably next year or the year after, all time types of stuff. Kane, best American of all time. McDavid, probably the best player of all time, right? So is there one thing you can pinpoint about those guys that you'd say that there's a commonality that those Mount Rushmore guys maybe share?
I think the easy answer is to say that they're all, competitive. I think most hockey players are competitive. I think what probably separates, those 3 guys specifically is, they go into each game expecting to be great. They are great. They're expecting to be great, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves to be great. I think that would probably be the one thing that sticks out to me. I think obviously everyone's competitive. Everyone wants to win. Everyone, a lot of the time, good players like that have great leadership qualities. But I really feel that it's their expectation of themselves to be, at the highest of the high. And especially those 3 guys, they don't settle for anything less. You can tell they're visibly, upset or frustrated when they don't play well, or they don't play up to their standard. And I think, when you hold yourself to that high of a standard, you expect it from yourself every night. And those guys find a way to produce points, produce offensively. All 3 of them have had over 100 points in the NHL at multiple times, I believe. I think all of them have multiple times. Yeah. I know Kane, McDavid, and I believe Ovechkin too. So, that's a short list of guys that, have had multiple 100-point seasons. It's not too many of them. And I think the way they do it is all 3 different ways. McDavid's fast, carries the puck, unbelievable shot, can find a way to score, create on the power play, 5-on-5, shorthanded, whatever it may be. Kane is just one of the best passers of all time. He can hold the puck in the half wall, and it seems sometimes we talk about like we don't know why teams just kind of back off him and like let him kind of sit there with it and make passes.
But they do.
You go at him, but he just finds a way to hold the puck, make the right play, look away, and make the right pass. Usually cross seam or whatever it may be down low when guys aren't looking. So, and then when it gets to Ovi, and it's I would say completely different. Ovi's also a great passer, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. Almost 700 assists in his career, maybe more. No, yeah, almost 700 assists in his career, and so he can also make passes. But when you're that good of a shooter and you're that much of a threat to shoot, you kind of have to respect the shot. I probably scored I would say around 10 goals in Washington in the last 2 years where everyone thinks he's shooting it and it just goes on my backhand and I tip it in, or off the pad and I just tip it in. So, like I said, I'm very fortunate to get to play with those players and still getting to play with those players. But I would say, sorry to kind of ramble on, but I would say it's the their excellence that they demand of themselves.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to follow up with that too, because, you mentioned before how you just got to find a way to give Ovi the puck. Like he wants it in a different way than Kane and McDavid does. And I want to bring up one of the goals that was scored this past season. And I'm bringing it up because our producer is a huge Leafs fan. And also because I think this play is just hilarious. And I wonder if you and Ovi had talked about it after, but this 2-on-1 you had against Toronto where Strome, you had a clear lane to the net, but Ovi's calling for it, I imagine. And he's, got that thing ready to rip. What's going on the bench after this goal? Are you guys sitting there looking, laughing at the iPad? Like, I mean, this is a crazy goal that happened last year.
Yeah. That's one of those where it's like I had some 2-on-1s where obviously the D is going to usually take away Ovechkin. Like that's what's going to happen. So you have the
which he did there. Which he did that.
Which he did there. But the few times I shot in the 2-on-1 with Ovechkin, I found myself not scoring, and I'm like, even if I can get it over to him at any point, like it's going to be either an open net or a really good chance to score. And no, not that I don't trust myself. I think there's definitely times to shoot. But when I'm like, I know McCabe slid there and he slid and he was sliding. And I didn't even look at the net. I didn't look at the net one time, basically. So I was just looking over to him the whole time. And I'm like, if I get this over to him, it's a goal. Like I know that for a fact. Where, I would like to think there's probably a 50-50 chance I was going to score from that spot. Obviously, no one's shooting percentage is 50%, but when you're that close on a 2-on-1, it's probably pretty close to that. But
yeah,
I just saw him waiting there, and I felt like we really needed a goal at that time. We were down 4-2 in the game, and he had already scored in the game, so you just got to go with the hot hand sometimes.
And wait, Stromer, I'm pretty sure that was a TNT broadcast, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I remember watching that game. And I'm yelling at you to shoot the puck the whole time. I'm like, Stromer, shoot it. I see McCabe go down, which that's kind of his move. I mean, you were still in Chicago when McCabe was there, right? Yeah. So you know what his tendencies are going to be. You guys were teammates right before that. And I'm literally yelling at you to shoot that puck. And then obviously the goal happens. And I'm like, well, that's why he makes $5 million. And I do a morning talk show. So yeah.
I also think that it got a little bit blown up because, first of all, Toronto, anything that usually happens with Toronto, it's, a bigger media story. Matthews had scored 2 goals that game. Ovechkin scored 2 goals. So that, the media was already covering that game heavily, and then it's on TNT. And I think just sometimes when those things happen, they blow up a little more than, if it was a Tuesday night in Washington against, a different team and wasn't on TNT, then it probably doesn't, blow up the way that it did. And that he scored. I think it would have been way worse if he didn't score. So I'm very thankful that he was able to put that one on.
Those plays are always funny too, though, because obviously as the play it's happening, it's so fast, and then when you go back and watch it on video, everything looks a little different. I always wonder those conversations on the bench with the iPads. They always intrigue me because every coach growing up, like when I played, obviously says like focus on your next shift, right? But now it's so common in the NHL, like you guys all watch your previous shift kind of as it ends, right? Like it's kind of crazy. I feel like with the iPads and how they've come into play in the NHL and stuff like that.
I agree, and I also think that I knew it was bad because when I got back to the bench, like multiple guys were like, "How do you not shoot that? Like, what do you think?" and then when it's like sometimes if you see something online and it kind of starts to spiral and blow up, and then this one was like instant. So I was like, okay, that was not the best play, but hey, we scored, and I'll take the assist.
Yeah,
one closer to Gretzky. So
I was just gonna say there's a very good chance you could be the guy who makes that pass. So I'll knock on wood for you, and I don't want to jinx it. Let's go a little current, Stromer, because I know Brian McClellan is no longer the GM. He's the president and they promoted, from within, but have you been pretty happy with the offseason? Because I mean, look, you can't not commend Washington for, making moves to try to continue to challenge and be competitive with the fact that they've got Ovi still scoring and they've got guys like you that they went out and they signed and they gave extensions to. Your back end, very underrated how good your back end is. It's pretty stacked back there. So have you felt pretty good about the offseason for your team?
I think it's hard not to, 100%. I mean, we kind of touched on it at the beginning of the podcast, how, we probably didn't, I don't want to say we didn't play well enough, because we definitely played well enough to make the playoffs, but, our goal differential obviously wasn't very good. We lost some big games, some big scores. But at the same time, I feel like, with what we went into at the start of last year with Backstrom and Kuznetsov, basically as the 1 and 2 centers, and how things kind of changed during the season, and then we do make the playoffs, I think it almost gave the organization some confidence that, this rebuild can, not even rebuild, this retool can kind of go faster than, what they might have thought originally. And then as a player, obviously you want to, see your team active on free agency day. You want to see your team making some trades and trying to get better. And based on the guys we got, I mean, I think for sure we got better, which is obviously a great thing. I think we added all the pieces that we needed to add, and it's now kind of on us. The management can only do so much; they can only put the players on the ice, and it's up to us to kind of do the rest. So I love the additions we made. I think Chikrin's an unbelievable player. I think underrated is a good word to describe him. I don't think too many people know how good he is. I think he's going to be a stud, and he already is a stud. And I think obviously Matt Roy is a guy that's from what I've heard, I only played against him a couple times, but defensive defenseman that jumps up into the play and makes a good first pass. And then look at the guys on forward that we got, like Mangiapane. He's a great player, a guy who's scored almost 30 or 31 time, I think. And PLD is coming off of not a great year up to his standards, and I think he's going to be motivated and excited. And you got to be happy. You got to be looking forward to the season.
Yeah.
Also, you have to think. Yeah.
I think Taylor Radish, a guy pretty well from juniors, right? Who had some pretty good success at times in Chicago. I don't know. I kind of lost track of it a little bit last year. Wasn't really paying close attention to them for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's Duhaime on that fourth line for you guys in the bottom of the lineup. Like you guys look like a team with a bunch of depth now. And look, the Metro, there's opportunity. I mean, the Rangers are going to be good. The Devils are going to be good. But after the Rangers and the Devils, you kind of look like you don't really know what you're getting from the Flyers. The Islanders continue to be pretty average. I think so there's definitely a lot of opportunity with the moves that the Caps management made, Jonny, with what they did.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I'm sure they're pleased with the AHL team, right? Back-to-back Calder Cup champs. I know your brher had the winning goal. My good buddy.
Oh yeah, congratulations on that. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, so I mean, no, go Strome.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, obviously that's a great sign for your organization when your team wins 2 straight Calder Cups. That's a great sign. Lapierre was one of our best players in the playoffs, and then the best player for Hershey in the playoffs. So I think that's obviously a huge bonus going into next year, and looking forward to seeing him grow and seeing how good he can be. I think he's a great player. I think he matured a lot. I think he's can be a really, really good player in the NHL, and I think the Caps believe that too. So yeah, I was definitely pumped up for them and for my little brother to get that huge goal. He didn't play at all in the playoffs the year before, so I know he really wanted to be a part of something special. And no, there's not much. You can't be much bigger of a part than what he was. So it was awesome to watch.
Yeah, it was pretty sick. He got those gloves off pretty quickly after he scored that goal too. There was no hesitation with that. It was pretty nice.
Did they win? They won on home ice in Hershey, right?
Yeah.
Were you able to be there for that one, Strome, or too tough with the family and everything?
Yeah, it was tough. My parents were there and my aunt and uncle were there. We had some tentative plans to go down for Game 7, which is on the Wednesday, but we didn't make it for Game 6 on the Monday. So I wish we would have been there. We all went. A lot of my buddies, like 5 or 6 of my buddies, went to Ryan's house and we watched it in the basement. And we had because it was the same time as Game 7, of the Stanley Cup Final. So we had 2 TVs going, and it was a good night of hockey.
Yeah, it was crazy. I wanted to rewind for just 1 second, Stromer, and talk about the playoffs because I covered that first round series against the Rangers. And, I thought you guys, it was a weird series, right? Like, obviously, it
Yeah.
ended in a 4-0 sweep, but it didn't really feel like the Rangers were that much better. And that was something that got talked about later on in the playoffs with the Rangers, going up against Florida and whatnot. But I'm curious from your end how you guys felt about your performance in that series, because obviously special teams ended up being the biggest difference. But, we've talked about it throughout this, 20 minutes about the group in the second half and making that playoff push. But when the season ended, how are you guys feeling about yourselves with how you put up against the President's Trophy winner?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously disappointing. There's no way around that. I think we exerted a lot of what we had to get to the playoffs in the last 15, 20 games. I think we were finding ways to win in the regular season that we just couldn't do in the playoffs. We were finding ways to win, whether it was our power play got 3 or 4 goals, whether Lindgren completely stole multiple games down the stretch for us. Our PK, we were giving up shorthanded goals in the playoffs, which we were one of the least amount of that in the regular season. So just, kind of was like a perfect storm where we weren't like getting blown out by any means. Like, sure, they controlled play at points. I think we controlled play at some points, probably a little less than them, but we just couldn't do that extra, kind of didn't have that extra like gear to kind of find a way to get past them. I think, when you start 2-0 down, and then that game 3 is a huge game, and we get up to a 1-0 lead, and then we give up a shorthanded goal, and then before you know it, like we're up 1-0, then we're down 2-1 after the first. So it's like we kind of just shot ourselves in the foot, a couple too many times, and we ended up couldn't get back from it. So obviously disappointing, but definitely learned a lot about myself and our team, and I think a lot of positives to look forward to next year. Like you said, not a lot of people predicted us to be in the playoffs or anywhere near that. So you got to take the positives from it and move on to next year.
And just on top of that too, one of the things that I found very enjoyable was talking to Spencer Carberry in that series. I feel like, people that don't pay attention to Washington don't really know much about him because obviously it was his first year behind the bench. But can you talk about him and just his message? Because he was one of the most well-spoken coaches that I've had the pleasure of interviewing. I mean, I was very, it was eye-opening to hear him speak for 4 games there.
Yeah, he's very detail oriented. I think you obviously saw that in the interviews. I think he articulates what he wants to say very well, and I think he does that to us as well. I think he's like I said, he's very detailed about the little things that he sees in the game. I think he's a very smart hockey mind, and the details that he sees within the game are what he preaches to us and what he tells us and what he sees. So I think anytime you have a coach that's that cares, you can tell how much he cares. Like, he talks for 15 minutes after the game in a press conference, and like you could tell he cares. And obviously that's what you want as a player. You want a coach that really cares about his team and his players, and we got that. So no, it's fun to be a part of that team and the coaching staff. And like I said, I'm just excited for next year, and I'm really looking forward to building on what we had last year.
Yeah, well, look, man, we know it's the middle of the summer. I'm sure your girls are dying to drag you into the pool right now. They're probably waiting for you because I see it. I gotta say, and I got to know you in Chicago, obviously, and I know how important your family is to you. It's awesome to see what a great dad you are, and how important that whole side of your life is. It's not just Dylan Strome, the hockey player. There is a whole nother side of you that I've had an opportunity to see when we were on the road and we would talk and whatnot. So really appreciate your time. We're rooting for you next year. We get excited when you do good things. We show them on the show quite a bit. We've talked about you on the show a number of times. We have 1 or 2 listeners that are with us almost every single morning in the season that are massive Washington Capitals fans. So when he sees this drop tomorrow, our guy Jeremiah is going to be really, really excited that we had you on. So we'll be watching, and hopefully that record gets broken next year, and we know where that pass is coming from. So thanks for your time today, buddy, and
no problem.
give the family my love. All right.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate you guys having me on, and keep doing what you're doing. It's fun to see all the updates and the and the podcast and the news. So you guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to have me on. So anytime you guys need something, you just let me know.
All right,
Stromer. Appreciate it.
You're the best, man. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll talk to you around training camp.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
All right, Colby, good stuff. Well done. You got a guest that showed up on
time. When I texted you yesterday that Stromer said he was in. I mean, he's listen, like normally when you text a guy to come on the show, you got to give him a little background. You got to, what time works for you. But Stromer is just one of the easiest going guys. Like you would never know this is a guy who makes $5 million a year and plays on, in the nation's capital. He's low maintenance. When I texted him, he said, when and where, you tell me. He was so good about it. I know he keeps track of DFO throughout the year too, because he's one of those guys that is a very, very smart hockey guy. Like his hockey IQ on the ice, it carries off the ice. I think he's the type of guy that probably would be a good TV analyst if he wanted to do it when he was done. Because I think he understands, like everybody who plays at that level, like understands the game to an extent. I think he can articulate it. And I think that his brain is as fast as his hands and his feet, which is probably why he can play with Patrick Kane, who slows it down and plays one way, Ovi, who plays a totally different way, and then McDavid, who plays at 300 miles per hour, all speed. So I think when you have a guy that can mesh with three different types of superstars like that, I think that the one thing you'd say would be he's got that hockey IQ that just kind of sets him apart from other guys. So it's great to have him on. Great to hear his perspective on those three players in particular. That was probably one of the things that I've never asked him that I really was curious to hear his thoughts on Mount Rushmore players, because look, I'm between the benches, Jonny, in a lot of those games, right? So I see like playing with Patrick Kane is not easy for a lot of guys, right? And that's not a knock on Kane. It's just you have to be, an astrophysicist, smart level to be able to operate at a level to succeed with a guy like Patrick Kane, because he's so cerebral. And I think that's probably something that goes overlooked about Zach Hyman. Probably something that goes overlooked about Tom Wilson, who's played with Ovechkin. I think, probably doesn't get overlooked with Gensel, who played with Crosby forever. I think we kind of give Gensel that acknowledgement about being such a smart player.
I think it was kind of the opposite, though. I think people were questioning whether Gensel would thrive or not without Crosby when he was traded to Carolina. Right. I think people gave Gensel his flowers, but also said, like, what will he be on his own?
Right. But I just mean as far as like we sometimes don't look at the players who play with the superstar, Zach Hyman got a lot of talk this year because he scored 50 goals. Right. And for the other reasons, and, from that moron who had that moronic comment during the year. But again, there's a certain guy who knows how to play with these players, and it's not for everyone. It really isn't. I mean, chemistry is a real thing, but most players in the NHL can play with a second or third line, right? I think anybody in the NHL can play with TJ Oshie, right? And that's not a knock on TJ Oshie at all. TJ Oshie's a superstar. He's been a superstar, right? But not every player can play with Crosby, Malkin, Ovechkin, McDavid, that list of those types of players.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And Stromer was a guy. Yeah.
And he's done it at every level too.
But he also was a guy that, he was obviously very humble in what he said about
very humble guy. That wasn't an act.
He was one of the guys that stepped up, like he said, Kuznetsov and Backstrom, right, were slotted as the 1 and 2 centers, and Backstrom obviously gets hurt, Kuznetsov gets traded, and Strome has to step up and produce, and he did. And that's not easy to do.
No. And here's the thing too. And Stromer is a very humble guy. Like that's not an act. That's just who he is and how he carries himself. He hasn't had this like easy road. I mean, he was a third overall pick. He gets traded to Chicago barely into his pro career. So Arizona kind of gives up on him a little bit. Chicago, he's got a bunch of highs and lows. Jeremy Colleton had him as a healthy scratch for the most part when in the beginning of the season. So wasn't giving him any opportunity there. And, then he kind of righted the ship as Derek King took over and he got more opportunity and he started to, do a little more of what the coaches were asking. None of us ever really understood it because you could see the skill and the ability. and you know that your team has more of an opportunity to create offense with him on the ice, that's a fact. And then he gets they let him go for nothing. They didn't trade him at the deadline. They didn't qualify him. So he becomes a UFA. He signs, I don't want to say it's a prove it deal because I believe he signed for like $3 million in Washington, I believe is what he signed for the first time.
The first time.
So nobody came in and said, here you go, Dylan. Here's 10, here's 8 years at 7.
I think it was 1 year also.
It was either 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't an $800,000 prove it deal. It was a $3 million, but he still had to go out and sing for his supper and prove it. And he's gone into Washington. He's had 2 very consistent seasons. He's grown his game. He's been good on the power play. He's been a guy now that Ovi wants out on the ice, giving him the puck. I mean, we showed that video clip, which was a really funny video clip. I mean, look, Strome's a good passer. Like, I didn't know his game when I got to Chicago, and I started to watch him. And with him, before he gets a puck, he knows what he's going to do with it, right? And that may sound simple, but a lot of guys get the puck, they scan, they can still make a play. You watch a lot of the plays that Dylan Strome can make, especially on a power play. When you put him down on the goal line, he gets the puck and he's already 1 or 2 steps ahead into playing that little play into the middle, into the bumper, into the slot, back up to the point, through the crease, whatever it may be. So, now he's in Washington, 2 years, 20 plus goals, signs the extension for $5 million a year. Again, when he signed that extension, I was so happy. It gives him stability. It gives him an opportunity to not have to move around a lot. He's got two small daughters and 2 young golden retrievers. He dealt with a really terrible tragedy in Chicago with his first dog. I don't know if you ever read that story.
No. What happened?
He had a golden retriever named Wrigley, and his dog ate something he shouldn't have. And when he went in to get it removed, which is very, very common amongst golden retrievers and all dogs, he got some sort of infection in the hospital, in the dog hospital. And he was like a 1-year-old dog or a 2-year-old dog that him and his wife had got. And he died at like 2 or 3 years old. And I mean, it was the front headline in the newspaper, in Chicago. I mean, it was really, really difficult. And it's funny when that happened, because I'm such a dog person and such a golden retriever person. That was when our friendship sort of evolved from just me being a broadcaster that said hello to him to like becoming friendly, because I reached out to him when that happened. And, we reached out to his wife and, the whole thing, because my wife and I were just so heartbroken for them. Like I had said, we had just lost our golden retriever 1 year prior. Not the same circumstance, but still, as a member of our family. And so any of the people that watch our show and listen to our show, they're dog people, they'll understand this. But that was kind of something that Stromer and I bonded over, that him, when he lost Wrigley was his name. And it was heartbreaking. It really was. And so, I'm obviously not thankful for that, but I'm glad that it bonded us. And I've now got this relationship with him because, like I said, you just got an opportunity to meet him for like 20 minutes. He's just, again, he's a humble guy.
Yeah. I honestly didn't even know that you guys were friends. Like when you said Dylan Strome's in for tomorrow, I was like, wait, what? That came out of nowhere. So it was cool to have him on. And again, like, thank you for sharing that story. I didn't know that story.
Yeah. That was it was a big story in Chicago. The Athletic wrote about it. I'm sure, all the Blackhawks fans knew about it. I mean, people were devastated for him. I mean, the team was really
I also
bad.
love the name Wrigley for a dog. I think that's awesome.
I mean, very, very cool name.
They just wrote that
Especially when you're living in Chicago and you're playing for the Blackhawks. And I mean, it was an absolute slam dunk of a name. Now his second golden that he just got, his young golden, his name is Oliver. So they have an Oliver golden too. Now Oliver is sitting on the couch here in my office, and he's staring. I
saw him behind you a second ago.
Yeah. He's staring at me because I just said the name Oliver. And anytime you say the name, it's like Voldemort. You really aren't supposed to say his name unless you want, him to come and be a part of things. So, yeah. So, a lot of different degrees of separation. I whenever I would come into the show and give you stuff about Spencer Carberry and stuff like that, because, I'm always checking in. How's Carbs doing? How's that going? And it's really, it's interesting to hear Dylan's take on all that because, he understands that it's his first time head coach in the NHL. I think Dylan's one of those humble guys who's a top line player who, is going to have your back as a coach, right? He's not the type of player, even when Jeremy Colleton was scratching him and he was on the road in Chicago, we'd be on road trips. He wouldn't be playing. Always, always, always a guy that I'd ask him, how you doing? And he'd have look, this sucks, but I got to just keep working and keep trying. And no matter how much this sucks right now, he just always had a good attitude. He really did. Never was MF in the coach, was never MF in the organization in Chicago. Never did any of that stuff. When he doesn't get qualified, he's not, oh, F these guys. It's not his personality. It just isn't. So easy guy to root for.
Yeah, it seems like all the Stromes are that way. I've never met Matt, but Ryan Strome was well loved here in New York for his 5 years that he spent here. I talked to him when he came here with Anaheim this past season. I actually walked down the MSG ramp with Ryan Strome this past year, as the team was going to the bus and stuff, and he was kind of talking to me. I told him that my cousin was his biggest fan when he was here. And my cousin actually had you'd appreciate this. I could find the picture later, but they were having a baby and they held up a little onesie that said Future Ranger or something. And Ryan Strome came over to the boards and took a picture with them holding up the onesie. It was a really nice moment for them. And they've always called Ryan Strome the Godfather now ever since that picture was taken. But yeah, the Strome guys just seem like good dudes. And, I know we kind of want to move on here, but there's really, dude, the NHL offseason has been the quietest I can remember in so many years. What?
You asked me if I've forgiven when we started the
Mario?
episode. You asked me about Mario. I will say this. I have forgiven him. The interview and the conversation you guys had together was awesome. It really was. I mean,
he's the best.
What an unbelievable personality this guy is. He's one of the guys that Amazon's following, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, he's not. Oh, I thought he was. So. Maybe on our show we said that they should follow him because he does have such a good personality, but I will tell everybody who listens, I give him a lot of credit. He reached out to me right away, right? Because he came on right at the end of our show.
He FaceTimed me right as we wrapped up the show. I was like, fuck me, boys. I'm sorry.
And Jonny put him on FaceTime and I had to run. I really couldn't do it. I had a busy week because of, we had Tony Vos's funeral and we had, I had a USA Hockey Development Camp all week that I was doing at the Atlantic District. So I just couldn't, but he did reach out. He did text me, which I appreciated. Look, I was,
you were pissed.
And I even told him, I was like, hey, next time I do one of your games, any turnover, any bad shift, I promise you there will be a replay. I promise you. But no, I'm kidding. Look, you know how I am with when we say we're starting at a certain time, we want to start at that time. But he did reach out. We're all good. We texted back and forth. He said he owes us one, which he doesn't, but he said he does. I said to him, look, you're doing us a favor. And he said, no. He said, you guys are doing me a favor too. You're giving me an opportunity to and so I appreciated the humbleness to that.
Well, it's true though. Mario even said it on the show. He's playing in San Jose. They don't get the media coverage that all these teams get. And I tell everyone, if Mario Ferraro played in maybe not a bigger market, but just if he was on a better team right now, he'd be loved by every NHL fan. Anyone who listens to that interview and doesn't like him, there's something wrong
he
with
also
that.
plays a really honest game. I mean, he's one of those players that every coach he's ever had just loved.
Works his ass off. Heartbeat of any team he's ever been on.
I mean, Greg Carvel, I go back to the years, those teams were pushing the Frozen Four, and we had a million questions for their coach about Makar. And it's not like he was disrespecting Makar, but all Greg Carvel, the coach of UMass, wanted to do was talk about Mario. What a leader he was, how hardworking he was. I mean, he was one of those players that the coach at UMass was just really proud to talk about. He really was. He's like, look, you see Makar, Makar. Makar gets all the love. This guy, Ferraro, just wait and see. And he's never played a game in the minors, Mario, and he never probably will. He's one of those guys that any team he plays for, the coach is going to love him. Boy, he'd look good on a pair in New York, wouldn't he? Oh man,
I've been begging for that.
He'd look. I mean, a guy of that caliber with that type of honest, hard-nosed defensive game. I mean, then you'd have Schneider, you'd have him. I mean, wow, that could be transformative to that blue line. He makes good money, as he should. As he should. So hopefully this year with Celebrini there and Smith there, they'll get a little more media attention. They'll get a couple more dates on TNT. So there'll be opportunities maybe to get Mario on the TNT.
I don't think they had one national broadcast game last year. Not one.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't. And I'm sure if they did, they were like not the featured team, obviously, right? They were the, because look, you want a market that's gonna have people tuned in. Like Chicago still gets national games because the Chicago fan base turns up. Like it's a reality. So Mario and I are all good. Like I said, I really appreciated him reaching out to me. That meant a lot. And I already knew him from doing Frozen Fours and stuff. And I'm sure he remembers doing those things. It wasn't that long ago. He's not been in the league for 10 years, has he? It's like 5 years, maybe.
Mario's been in the league, I think the COVID year, 1920 was his
right.
year.
So we're coming up like year 4 or 5 for him.
Yeah. 5.
Yeah. So
we're actually, I think this is year 6 for him.
All is good. All is good there. He did say he'd come on the show for us at some other time. Maybe when they're out in the East this season, we'll get him out. So at that point, we'll get him back on the show and get a little live look in with him. During the regular season, as we, look, it's almost August. I mean, I know we're still like a week away from August, but like we're just about in August, and like. This will sound ridiculous, but this is how I live my life, no matter what I'm doing. Once we hit August, it's almost September, right? It's like, that's
you don't live in the present. You just look for the next thing.
It's not even that. I just like break life up into like smaller segments. Like quantities. I do it the most when I'm on the Peloton. Like when I have an hour ride on the Peloton, I'm like, all right, let's just get through the first 10 minutes. That way my legs will be numb. And then once I get through 10 minutes, I go, all right, I only have 50 minutes left. Which means I've only got, 15 sprints left or something, or whatever type of intervals I'm doing that day on the Peloton. And then I'm like, all right, so I only have to do 5, and then I'm a third of the way there. And I just like constantly spin this in my head of like, all right, if I do 5, then I get 30%. Then I'm halfway to 50% of the ride. And so I'm thinking about the hockey season, right? The hockey season.
I know.
Gets going again like October 1, basically. So we got to get to September.
Earlier than that. Yeah.
Then we're
training camps, I think, are like end of September.
They're in September, but I mean, we'll start going at our 4 days a week in October. That's when we'll jump back in at 4 days a week live shows. So that's how my brain processes things. It makes sense to me, and it's how I can take like a long year and I can like chop it up. It's I got other long events happening in my life right now that I have to look at these like little mini milestones for, just to kind of, keep things going.
Speaking of that, actually, I was with my mom on Saturday and I was getting my tux like refitted, and it's like my first time. This is the first tux I've ever purchased as an adult. And my mom was like, I wish Colby was here to see you just trying to figure out this tuxedo. Cause I've never dressed myself in a tux. I've been to like 3 weddings in my life, and my dad's always helped me put on the bow tie and all that stuff. Like I look like a fucking idiot in this store.
Why? What do you need a tux for?
I got 3 weddings the next 3 weekends in a row. I got like 5 in the next 2 months. But this weekend I have a wedding. Next weekend I have a wedding in Chicago, and the weekend after I have a wedding in New York again.
And you need a tux for all of them, or?
I can't. What am I going to rent a tux 3 straight weekends?
Well, hold on. Not every wedding requires a tux.
Well, they're all black. They're all black tie, and the one in Chicago, I'm actually a groomsman for.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can believe that. People like you. You're likable.
I'm a good friend.
You're a lot more likable than I am. So
I try to call you to be a friend, and you just don't answer, and then you never call me back.
Yeah, but I text you back.
Yeah, you text me back.
But you call me. I gotta tell you, your timing of calling me is like you have the worst timing. You either call me when I'm like trying to put Sloan down for a nap, or you'll call me at like 9 p.m., which I understand for you is like an early time.
I'm like just getting in bed. It's like a good time to call.
But like 9 p.m. is like the end of my wind down. Like we put Sloan to bed at 7:30. I'm already in bed by like 8. Like I'm talking showered, teeth brushed, in bed, whatever I'm either reading or try not to watch too much before I go to bed. 'Cause it's not great for you. Sometimes we get the show on, like Sunday nights, we get House of Dragon on, and then I literally can't sleep after House of Dragon because I'm too like, all right, I want another episode, right? But so when you're calling me at 9 p.m., like it just most of the time, I'm not even kidding, it doesn't ring because once like 8:30 comes around, do not disturb goes right on the phone. So
I'll keep that in mind.
You hit me at 9, it's not even ringing. And at that point, I just, there's nothing, there's just, I don't have it in me. I just don't
you
have
just don't want to talk to me. It's okay.
I don't have it in me.
You just say it.
I don't have it in me, Johnny. It's not personal. All right. You're not the only one that gets screened at that time.
All right. Fair enough.
So,
fair enough. But, wait, I want you to tell us though, like just back into hockey a little bit about what you did last week. Cause it was, pretty cool working with USA Hockey and, players of the next generation, right? Like these are elite players in the area that are going to potentially compete for that 40 camp, right? Can they?
Yeah, these kids are. It's funny. We actually talked about this with them. So, they're about 1,000 days away, a little less than the 40-man camp tryout for the age group. So they're about 3 years away. So they're young kids, but they're not that young. That's what I was kind of explaining to them when I talked to them. And what I did this past week was, I came up in the Atlantic District. There's 11 districts in the United States. USA Hockey is split into 11 districts, right? And, they have a player development program in each district. And so I went in last week to work with the 12 13s and the 13 14s, like age, not birth year. That's like how old they were. I forget what their birth years were, like 10 or 08s or 9s or I don't go by the birth years. I'm just like, how old are you kids? That's what I need to know.
I think 08s are like just now allowed to be recruited.
Right.
So it's probably like that area.
So the Atlantic District, they have these like training camps in the summer. And I did them when I was a kid. They picked the select teams, right? So depending on what age group, depends on how many they pick, which is the best kids from every team. They try out, they make the Atlantic District team. They're part of the player development program. They go to like 2 training camps, and then they go to like a select festival with all the kids from all the different districts within USA Hockey. And, I did I actually did 2 training camps last week. Monday, Tuesday was one, Wednesday was one, and then half of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was another, right? And it just was funny to be back there with these groups because I have such vivid memories of doing this as a kid, starting at the age of 12 years old. Granted, ours were at Lawrenceville Academy. They weren't at Iceline, but after COVID, they stopped doing that, like so many other things. But it was fun. Like I was on the ice with them a little bit. It was mostly, they had me there doing evaluations, and then they had me speak to every group individually. They'd have like, they'd literally have like, I had like a 1-hour talk with like all, 60 kids that were at the youngest age group. And then just me. I mean, there were other people in the room, but they had me in there to speak to the team. And, one of the biggest things that I talked about with them all was just how important their reputation is. I was like, look, everybody can watch you play on film, live barn, live rink, whatever. I was like, but what you guys need to understand is like, you guys are now at an age where I know you're only 12 and 13 years old and I know you're kids, but when you step in the rink, you're being evaluated. I'm like, and I'm not trying to scare you guys, but I'm just telling you guys the truth. Because what they do, and I never even really knew this, but I'm really impressed by it. And this is happening in USA Hockey all over. These kids every kid now has a file. Every kid who makes the USA Hockey Select Festival in each district now has a file. And we, as evaluators, have to write down notes about their play every time we're around them. And then they want us to write about how they are when they're out the lunch room
or whatever,
in the locker room, on the bench, in the practice, in the meetings, in the video sessions, everything. And what I was explaining to these kids is like, look, like there's so much information on you guys now that like, make sure you realize that I want you to have fun and be kids, but I want you guys to understand that you are being evaluated even at this young age. You are 2.5, 3 years from having an opportunity to go play for the U.S. National Development Program. I asked everyone, raise your hands. Do you guys want to play in the NHL? Do you want to play college? Do you want to play the U.S. national team? Every kid raised their hand. Every single kid, which is normal for USA hockey kids. I mean, that's the U.S. national team is kind of the first step in the journey of like the golden ticket, right? And I got to do it. I made that team, and it was amazing. Like making that team was like unbelievable, right? Wearing that USA jersey, unbelievable experience. So, we had a good talk. I spent like 45 minutes to an hour with each team, depending on how many questions they asked. And some of them asked funny questions. Some of them had more serious questions. But it was a great experience. Like, I honestly never had the mentality that I wanted to like give back. I really didn't to hockey. And then I think as I've gotten a little bit older, I think I've probably come to appreciate everything hockey's done for me. Yeah. It really has. And it's funny because like John Stevens actually said this to me recently. John Stevens is the assistant, coach out in Vegas. He lives locally at the Shore. He runs the local summer skates and stuff like that.
He used to be the head coach of the Flyers, right?
Flyers, played for the Phantoms, coached the Phantoms. Like his blood, and identity starts here in Philadelphia with the Flyers, right? His boys grew up in the South Jersey area. So
I think I played against Nolan growing up.
Yeah, you probably did. Yeah,
he played
Nolan and John. They're good players. One plays in the Swedish League, one plays in the American League. I'm surprised neither have made it to the NHL. I really am, because they're very detailed hockey players. They're kind of typical coaches' kids, play hard, detailed. So he actually recently said this to me. He was like, I owe the game everything. I don't have anything in this world that's not from hockey. And I'm like, whoa, thinking about it. I'm like, that's kind of true for me too. Yeah. Like, I just like don't know what in the world that I have that there isn't a connection back to hockey. Even what I do now, what you do now, it's all hockey, right? I even made a joke when I was talking to the older kids this week. I'm like, guys, because a lot of them started following me on Instagram. I could see like I was getting all these new follows. And I was like, guys, literally the game of hockey has given me everything. Like you name it, whether it's beaches, whether it's having a beach house, whether it's whatever. And I go, look at my wife. I go, you think I would have landed her if I didn't play hockey? And like the older kids started dying laughing. Yeah. The other coaches there really started laughing at that. But it really, like, I have a hard time, Johnny, thinking of anything that I have in the world that you can't make the argument that it connects back to hockey. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I do. I mean, there are other things like I feel like that are a little bit different too. Like I would put summer camp up there. Like I think summer camp to me was
that's also a very. I mean, listen, anybody who knows anything about Jews like that's like a thing as a kid. You go to sleepaway summer camp. I didn't do it. My brothers did it. I didn't because of hockey, but it's a thing.
But it's kind of a funny story. My experience with USA Hockey and these development camps is very different. Like I was an alternate 3 years in a row, so I never made it to the national camp. But the third year that I was playing in it, when I was in 10th grade, I was line mates with Alex Tuck. And I was having like my best camp that I had. And it's only a 3-year thing because once you turn 16, there's no more development camp, I think, right?
Yeah, Atlantic District is one
like 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade.
I think. Early. Atlantic does 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
They do a lot.
Atlantic District goes above and beyond what a lot of the other districts do.
Got it. So when I was growing up, it was like 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, because in 11th grade, you're in the program by then. So I was playing on a line with Alex Tuck. I probably had like, my dad also loves telling the story. I had like 8 points in like 3 games, probably. Like I was like, this is my fucking shot. I'm going to make it. And that Saturday of the development camp weekend, it was my best friend's little brother, who's like a little brother to me, the closest thing I've ever had. It was his bar mitzvah. And me and my dad were like, we committed to going to the bar mitzvah, but I was like playing really well. And we like talked about it as a family, and I left the camp to go to the bar mitzvah. And my dad still says like, maybe that would have changed everything in your career if you stayed.
I mean, dude, those USA.
I know.
I mean, Johnny,
I know.
My 90% of my college interests, like I was doing all my visits as a 15-year-old, came after Select 14's year Select 14 festival. Or Select 15s. Like I had very good national festivals. And then I started getting invites to every college campus in the United States. Like I got to go wherever I wanted to go. Those were a big deal.
Yeah, no,
festivals.
I
and
still
your
think about
dumbass left for a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not the most you story of all time.
It's the most me thing of all time. Like, because I was an alternate the 2 previous years, and you know hockey, it's political. So like my dad was like, listen, you're probably not going to make it anyway.
You and also if you burn them, bye. Like they will never forgive you if you burn them.
Yeah. So I wanted to share that story though, because
I
also think it's pretty cool that I was on a line with Tuck, and like, it was pretty.
Yeah,
he was sick. He was so good.
No, and listen, there were some good kids. Like there's a couple of kids that I was with this past week that in 3-4 years will probably be names we're talking about as up and comers, right? So I like I said, I got they do an off ice combine. They give you the aggregate of all their scores. They see where they are. And another really interesting thing John Stevens told me to kind of keep an eye for was he's like, look, if you get a kid at that age, 13, that does really poorly in the off ice testing, he goes, you should be excited if they're really good on the ice and they're really bad in the combine and they're not explosive and they're weak and they're slow and whatever. He's like, be excited. I'm like, why?
They're only going to get stronger and better.
He's like, because that means that there's so much more to go and they're already really good on the ice. Imagine when those two things meet, all of a sudden you're talking about a really good hockey player. So it was a great experience. I had a really enjoyable time being back, talking to the kids. I'm really impressed with the Atlantic District and in USA Hockey. Our friend Glenn that we talk about is the USHL commissioner, is also the president of the Atlantic District still. John DeNorsha is in charge of the player development program. JD was second in command when I was coming through it all these years ago. The guy who was running the program at that time was a guy by the name of John Riley. He lives locally to me. He's the head amateur scout for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He worked for the Flyers for 12 years. So they've graduated some people, but it's just impressive to see how dialed in they are with these kids. And I'm excited for the future. I think we're seeing a shift like Hockey Canada. And look, Hockey Canada still may win. I think USA is going to have a good chance in these next couple events, but you are seeing a shift and you're seeing USA Hockey narrow the gap. I'm not saying they've overtaken Hockey Canada by any means.
I think Rupper said something on National Network last week that the U.S. could be the favorite, like
maybe for this tournament, but let's just look overall. How many guys are playing hockey and what I'm not just talking about the cream of the crop. We're talking about the general picture here. And I just think I give USA Hockey a lot of credit. I'm obviously a little bit biased. I understand that. I'm a USA Hockey guy through and through. I came through the program, but I'm just impressed with how they're tracking players and how they're aiding these kids in their development, and how even at a young age, even at a young age, they're getting these kids dialed in and they're learning, okay, how do I help these kids? Where are they deficient? How do we track them? How do we continue to make sure that we put them in good situations? We showcase them in the right situations, just everything and anything. And, it was a good experience. I talked with them about maybe getting involved with the Quebec teams because the district oversees the Quebec teams.
Did you talk to them about being good as podcast guests?
You mean any of the kids?
Just like be fucking entertaining?
Yeah, no, we didn't really talk media stuff. That wasn't.
I was kind of making a joke.
Well, no, but I think that's a reasonable point.
Yeah, it's important.
Start giving these kids media training. I think that would be something more for like 15s and 16s, not like the 12s and the 13s. And I think next summer I'll be more involved. I did tell them I'd like to be more involved with some of the older kids as well. But for me, I want to meet the kids when they're 12 and 13, because if I start to develop a relationship with them at a young age, I think I can have a greater impact on them. You know what I mean? When you start working with them young, when a kid's 16, 17, like they've already come through the program. And so I'm going to lean more into lean more into being a part of the local hockey scene. I think now that I've kind of started to get re-involved,
it's fun.
It is fun. It's something that I didn't think I would like, Johnny. I'll be honest with you. I thought it was glorified babysitting, but it's really not. I was wrong, and I'm happy that I was wrong, and I'm happy how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love it. I worked the UMass camp last week. I'm doing Matt Martin camp next month, which is always fun. Just being on the ice, dude. There's nothing better. There's really not.
I think it's funny. Like, I actually think next summer we're gonna try to do some hockey camps around here. I've talked.
Why don't we start one?
I've talked. Well, I mean, you could be like one of our counselors.
Yeah, I'm not gonna run it.
But your name isn't gonna go on the wall. But you could be a counselor.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Right. So I talked to Frank a little bit about that. Him and I have talked about it, and Tony D'Angelo and I, we sat together at Tony Vosa's funeral. And it's really funny. Like, again, I know that people hate him. Like, I know they do, but all I can tell you is as far as a local pro goes in our area, the only guy local pro, and I'm one of them, and have done a terrible job. Tony will go to the rink for stick and puck and go out on the ice and just start helping random kids. And then we'll stay after, and he will sit there and talk with any kid who wants to come and ask him and take pictures and sign. And I got to tell you, nobody in our area, Johnny Gaudreau, Eric and Buddy Robinson, who have played in the NHL. Obviously me. Jamie Lundmark is a local guy. He played in the NHL. He was a Ranger. I don't know if you remember him. You would have been really young.
No.
I'm not Eric Tangrady. Now he moved to Pittsburgh, so it's a little bit different, but nobody has been better with kids in our area at just being available than Tony than Tony D'Angelo. And Tony Vos, we all tragically know what happened to him. He runs a lot of the skates in our area. He's the guy who works out on the ice, all the pros, right? And, when he passed away, Tony D stepped right up, the young guys, the college kids, the junior kids, whatever, and stepped right up and started helping with all these kids. Like, again, his reputation, for people who the people who know him versus what you read on the internet about this guy, it's a complete 180 degree separation. So I talked to him. I've talked to Frank. We're going to try to put some good hockey camps together in this area over the next couple of summers. We're starting the planning phases of that now.
Well, yeah, if you want to include me, that'd be great.
We'll include you. And James Van Riemsdyk and his brothers had their hockey camp last week. Now that's more in like central Jersey, like an hour and a half from here. But he was the one who was kind of like, you should really do it. He's like, first of all, there's a lot of money in it, which is obviously just an added bonus.
Aside, yeah.
But he said like it's really a cool thing. And now his youngest brother Brendan runs the camps, and James and Trevor are just kind of there. But the youngest
played
brother,
Brendan, he's 9'6".
Yeah, he's UNH, and he played at UNH, and then he transferred to Northeastern with the COVID year and whatnot. But it's a good opportunity, and I'm slowly but surely getting back into youth hockey and doing all that stuff in our area, and I'm enjoying it. And I slightly mentioned on our show that I was having another child here soon.
We kind of skip past that.
We are having a boy here in the next couple of months. So, I'm sure at some point he's going to want to play hockey. So I guess I'm going to be back in the youth hockey scene before I know it. And V-Dog is Vic has been campaigning for me to name my son Vic. I love you, buddy, but there can only be one Vic in my life, and that's you.
Vic's a very popular Jewish name. Vic Cohen has a nice ring to it.
My son will not be named Vic. I can tell you that much. But there can only be one. There can only be one Vic in my life. So, what do you have going on the rest of the week, Johnny?
I'm going to the Shoulder Check Showcase on Thursday night, which is a charity game for mental health. And granted, I haven't been there yet, so I don't want to speak on it so much right now. I'll speak on it next week after I experience it. But it's after a kid named Hayden Thorson, who was just an all-around incredible kid, left us a little too early, but, was a leader off the ice, always checking in on his friends. And that's the whole theme of it. Shoulder check is to just check in on people, check in on your friends, reach out, you never know what people are going through, but there's going to be a lot of NHL stars currently at this event. It sounds like Trevor Zegras. I think Shaddy's going to be there. Frank Vetrano, Shane Pinto.
Your boy. A lot of your boys
Shane
are going to be at this thing.
Yeah, Cole Caulfield, I think, is going. So more names like that. I'll be covering it Thursday night. But again, I'll talk more about it next week just because I don't want to say anything that's not accurate because I haven't been before. But I'm excited to do that on Thursday.
You're covering that for Daily Face-Off.
Yeah, covering that for the Daily Face-Off. So I'll have a story coming out about that probably Friday. I'm also working on another story that involves Artemi Panarin that should be out maybe next week. At the UMass camp, I was talking about Idar Sunyev, who's going to be a sophomore, who's from Russia and knows Panarin very well. And Panarin has been sort of this mentor for him in his career. Like, I think Panarin had him out to Ranger playoff games. They've worked together in Russia throughout the summers and stuff. So going to work on a story, with comments from Sunyev and hopefully from Panarin. If that's
very cool. I'm glad. I'm happy that Panarin is doing that. I'm someone who never really fully thought or respected how hard it is to come here when you're from another country until I went to another country to play hockey and had no other North Americans on the team when I first went to Finland, and very, very difficult. I mean, on a personal level, it was one of the biggest challenges of my hockey career. I was so miserable off the ice. It was hard to function on the ice. So I'm happy that
was England, right?
No, Finland.
Well, didn't you play in England too?
I played in England, but I played in the Champions League tournament. I didn't actually, I didn't play in the regular league. They had a team that was in the Champions League. So they bought a bunch of has-been players for 6 weeks that try to help them keep the games close. And it didn't really work. We played a team in the Swedish league and we got destroyed. We played a team in the Finnish league and we did okay. We lost like 3-1, but the Swedish team beat us like 10-0. It was like embarrassing. We didn't have the puck the entire game. So, but it's good to see players do that type of thing. And I think that Suniev kid at UMass has potential. It's got to be a little more unlocked, but I think Carve will probably do a good job with that.
He's sick.
So look, there are 2 quick house cleaning items we can touch on.
But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Out West, before we get into the only news that there is to talk about. But summertime just got a little sweeter thanks to the guys over at Out West. That's right, everyone. As we mentioned earlier this year, Out West has released a brand new collection featuring 2 new hoodies and 6 stylish polos. Colby's wearing one right now. But here's the catch. Some styles are flying off the shelves faster than expected. So head over to www.outwestgolf.com and use our code Cuppa, CUPPA, in all caps for 15% off of your first order before they're gone. Out West products are the perfect blend of comfort and functionality. Swing, hit, and run and move in the best up-and-coming activewear line in the game this year. Experience their products for yourself. Get out and get active this summer with Out West. You'll be glad that you did. So big shout out to our lovely sponsor and partners over at Out West Golf. We love them. But yeah, Colby, the housekeeping notes that we've got, because again, this has been arguably the quietest NHL offseason I've ever experienced in my life.
Well, look, the Flyers officially, they can say that their man has arrived. There's pictures all over the internet right now of Danny Briere holding his sticks and Keith Jones. The 2 big bosses of the organization physically went to Philly Airport and picked up Michkov. And I know Danny Briere is going on, he's got some personal time coming up. So he might have actually had to delay that just to get to the airport to pick up Michkov. So I know the Flyers fans are probably really, really excited that this whole thing is finally sort of coming to the starting line, we'll call it, because it's a long ways away, but it is exciting that they get this big time prospect, a guy that, I think a lot of people are probably looking at the savior of the franchise. I don't know if that's fair. I don't think it's
teams
fair.
Also passed on him because they weren't sure he'd ever come.
Well,
right?
Listen, that's why he fell to 7th overall. Yeah. Otherwise, he probably, is looking at it as a top 1, 2, or 3 overall pick. So that's obviously good news for the Flyers. They're a team that needs some good news. And then Dean Evason, we've been pretty critical on the Columbus Blue Jackets on this show for a while now. I think
we said it last week that he was the lead candidate, though.
Yeah, we said him or Woodcroft. Look, I don't have a whole lot to say about this because I'm not overly familiar with him. I know guys like playing for him in Minnesota. I know Bill Guerin told us he didn't want to fire him. Like it wasn't something that he felt good about. It had to happen with Bill's experience, and sometimes you need that. We got an opportunity to talk to Billy at the draft, if you remember correctly. We were shooting the shit with him after dinner that night. We went to
Are you asking me if I remember correctly? Of course I remember.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that's where we ran into him and we were talking to him, right?
Yeah, it was Beauty in Essex, right at the bar.
Okay, that was the restaurant. Yeah, I couldn't remember where we ate. So I don't have an opinion about the Columbus Blue Jackets hiring. Like I get it. You wanted a veteran coach who's going to know who's not going to be green, because I think there's been too much of that. You want a guy who's going to hold players accountable. You need a coach that's going to get Johnny Gaudreau going too. I mean, they need this guy to play well. They really do.
I think the biggest thing for Columbus right now is finding just stability, right? Like the last 2 or 3 seasons. I mean, like last year, they basically finished the season with like an AHL roster, like 2 seasons ago with an AHL roster. I mean, they had so many guys that were injured. And then last year, obviously, it was just a total shit show with Vincent behind the bench and guys getting scratched. Like Fantilli was scratched, Juracek scratched. Like it just didn't.
Fantilli got scratched. I think
he did.
Was on the 4th line. I don't think he ever got scratched.
You don't think he got scratched? I thought he got scratched one game.
Yeah, I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think he got scratched. But 4th line mismanaged the whole 9 yards.
There was just no stability. I think that was the thing.
It's not going to be a shit show there with Don Waddell. It's not. Yeah. I mean, he is the farthest thing from a shit show. So it will not be a shit show under any circumstance with him.
But I also mentioned it, I think, last week when we were talking about Evason. Michael Russo at The Athletic, who I actually got pretty friendly with covering the Ranger Florida series, who does an incredible job for The Athletic. He sat down one-on-one with Dean Evason, I think 2 days after he was fired by Minnesota, and did a great one-on-one interview with him.
2 days, or was it like a week or two, wasn't it?
It was shortly after.
Yeah, that was great. I agree. That was a really good conversation.
So highly recommend anyone going back and reading that, especially Blue Jackets fans, because it was a very just what's the word I'm looking for? Like authentic or genuine conversation.
Very authentic.
Very authentic. And, you don't really get that from coaches after they're fired. Like that's the one thing about coaches. And I've talked about this with media members. Like sometimes when you have good rapport with a coach, you want to thank them for their time and being cooperative with you, especially in the media. But when they're fired, you just don't hear from them again, really.
Yeah.
So it's,
look,
it's one of those things where
every NHL team I've worked for has gone through multiple coaches. No joke. Yeah. When I was doing Flyers TV, they were like 2 or 3 coaches. When I was doing Blackhawks, Jeremy Colleton.
And you don't hear from them after. They get fired.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of them that I had relationships with, I'll reach out to them. Like Jeremy Colleton, I knew from playing. We played against each other in the American League. And so it's a little different. I reached out to him and just said it was good to work with you. I'm sorry about what went down. I'll see you. We'll cross paths again soon. Derek King came back as an assistant, so he was still there and we had developed a relationship, so he didn't get fired. He was interim head and then he became assistant when Luke Richardson got the job. But you're right. I mean, look, I've even played for teams with coaches that have gotten fired, and it's like, wait, like, what do you do? It's like, it's or you get traded and it's like, okay, bye, have a good time in the next locker room. So
it's crazy.
It's a business. It really is. It's crazy. We've had 28 new coaches since 2022. John Cooper, 2013, Mike Sullivan, 15, Bednar, 2016, and Brendan Moore, 2018. Every other coach has been to 2022 or later, which is only 2 years. It's turning into the NFL. It really is. It's crazy. It's nuts. The movement on the coaching staffs here. There's more of a premium on getting it done now than ever. But that's it. And Johnny, I will say, we talk about how boring hockey is right now. Man, I wish we did a political podcast. I mean, literally, as we're on our show, the director of the director of the Secret Service, the head of the United States Secret Service, resigned as we're doing our show. And again, I know you don't follow politics like I do.
I'm getting into it.
I know you are. You've been writing me, and that's what I always tell you. I don't care which way you like or which side you vote or whatever. I think it's a civic duty when you live in a republic, which we do, or, I know a lot of people say democracy, but it's a republic. I think it's your civic duty to vote and to just have an understanding and forget even the president. vote for your senators and your local city councilmen. And I just personally believe in all that, because I truly don't like people who bitch and complain about what's going on, and then when they have an opportunity to go and vote, they don't do it. Now, some people will rebut that and say, look what's happening right now with the DNC. No one's vote counted. They're about to have the Democratic nominee be someone who got 0 votes. They didn't have a primary, didn't get any votes. So I understand why people would be pissed off about that. That pisses me off without a doubt. But I do think it's important to vote. And that's why I always give you shit and keep telling you, like, just read, like, again, just like understand what's going on. Because look, the director of the United States Secret Service just resigned. That's a big deal. I mean, that really is. That's a big deal in our country. And things are a shit show right now. And I don't want to go down the political rabbit hole.
I'm begging that you don't.
I'm not going to go down the political rabbit hole, but you said there was no news, and I just gave you some news. That's big news here in America. So,
well, I clearly said no hockey news.
Exactly. No, I know that. I know you did. You did say that. No, I'm not gonna twist your words like I normally do to make them fit whatever narrative I want to come at you with. I'm not gonna do that to you here. I would not do that to you with politics. Hockey, I will do that because you can at least fight back. But politics, you're new. You have been texting me about things happening politically lately, which
asking questions.
Dude, the way you learn is ask questions. I had to ask a lot of questions. I was around people that were political, and I started to listen and learn and ask questions and understand. And you know, now I wish I had no idea and was totally ignorant to all of it. And I would probably not be as irritated all the time. So let's leave it at that.
Yep.
We'll be back. We are recording this on Tuesday. Today's date is July 23rd. We will be... Vic is chirping us. We will be dropping this at 9 a.m. Wednesday, the 24th. The rest of the week, I'm going to go down to the Titans have their North American League tryouts this week. They already started. I'm going to go down and help evaluate Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That'll be a lot of fun. It'll be enjoyable to see these guys trying to make a junior team in our area. So I'll look forward to doing that. And we'll bring in another guest next week. We don't know who. We'll start figuring.
We got a lot of names that we're working on.
We'll start figuring that out now, but we'll be back with you guys next Wednesday, 9 a.m. Same deal. You got anything else, Johnny boy?
No, I thought you did a good job covering it all. Thanks everyone for listening. We love you. We miss you. And we definitely missed the chat. I do got to say, we do miss the chat.
We'll be back in October, baby. We'll be back in October. A couple months. We're not that far away from that. We're really not. August, September, and then we're back.
Yep. But that's all I got. So great show. Good stuff, Colby. Good stuff, Vic. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.